Welcome back to Arise News Hour. I'm Charles Anyikolu. Now, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says his government will change the direction of the British economy and move away from what he called uncontrolled immigration. Giving his keynote speech at the Conservative Party conference, Mr. Johnson promised to end a broken model of low wages and growth. This week's conference in Manchester has taken place amid concerns over rising inflation, supply chain problems, and petrol and worker shortages.
On the steps of Downing Street, I promised to fix this crisis. And after decades of drift and dither, this reforming government, this can-do government, this government that got Brexit done, that's getting the COVID vaccine rollout done, is going to get social care done. And we are going to deal with the biggest underlying issues of our economy and society, the problems that no government has had the guts to tackle before. And I mean the long-term structural weaknesses in the UK economy. It's thanks to the vaccine rollout that we now have the most open economy and the fastest growth in the G7. We have unemployment 2 million lower than forecast. We have demand surging. And I'm pleased to say that after years of stagnation, more than a decade, wages are going up faster than before the pandemic began. And that matters deeply because we are embarking now on a change of direction that has been long overdue in the UK economy. We're not going back to the same old broken model with low wages, low growth, low skills, and low productivity, all of it enabled and assisted by uncontrolled immigration. And the answer to the present stresses and strains, which are mainly a function of growth and economic revival, is not to reach for that same old lever of uncontrolled immigration, to keep wages low. The answer is to control immigration, to allow people of talent to come to this country, but not to use immigration as an excuse for failure to invest in people, in skills, and in the equipment, the facilities, the machinery. That is the direction in which this country is going now, towards a high wage, high skill, high productivity, and yes, thereby a low tax economy. That is what the people of this country need and deserve. In which everyone can take pride in their work and in the quality of their work. And yes, it will take time. And sometimes it will be difficult. But that was the change that people voted for in 2016. And that was the change that people voted for again powerfully in 2019. And to deliver that change, we will get on with our job of uniting and levelling up across the UK. The greatest project that any government can.
The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Well, listening carefully to that speech was Arise Correspondent Lape Olarinoye, and she joins me now from London for more. Good to see you, Lape. What's being made of Boris Johnson's speech? How is it being assessed?
Well, good evening to you, Charles. Well, we've just seen excerpts of that very, very infamous speech there that is being received with mixed feelings over here in the UK, particularly because of the fuel shortages and the worker shortages, as well as a lot of uncertainty surrounding Brexit and in time for Christmas, a lot of trade deals that are uncertain and unclear at the moment. And particularly many families still living in poverty, many living in starvation. That speech didn't answer many of their uncertainties. So a lot of people are seeing the speech as something that is quite philosophical, theatrical in some parts, and no doubt in typical Boris Johnson fashion, very comedic as well. There wasn't enough policy conversation. There wasn't enough talk of strategy of how we're going to get there. And all-roundedly, Charles, it was a lot of optimistic conservatism, which is what the Conservative Party love about Boris Johnson and has taken him this far in his career as a politician. So, of course, it was well received by many Conservative Party members as well as the Conservative supporters here in the UK. But generally, the public wanted more. They wanted more policy. They wanted more strategy after over a year of so much uncertainty and yet still a lot of people living in terrible conditions.
Well, you're quite right in that Mr. Johnson's speech was rapturously received at that Conservative Party conference. Someone described it as a classic piece of Johnsonian rhetoric, a sort of political alchemy, taking a huge problem which is facing him, the supply chain disruption, the economy and all the rest of it, and somehow fashioning that into an optimistic, upbeat message about a brand new economic strategy. Nevertheless, he did talk about a change of direction for the Conservative Party and by extension the UK, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He made mention of a lot of changes with regards to increase of wages, an increase of skilled workers, and this notion of levelling up, being able to give children across the country a fairer education, with children from state schools having access to more Oxbridge kind of universities, Russell Group universities, and he gave examples of many of those schools that are currently following that example. He also spoke about trying to unite the south and the north of the country through transport links, as well as opportunities to job and work, and a very, very contentious matter, which is the notion of the property ladder, and talking of 95% mortgages offered for more young people to get onto that property ladder were a lot of the aspects of positivity that he brought to the speech. But if we fact check a lot of these, none of these are actually currently in process. I mean, the Conservative Party promised when they became re-elected back in 2019 that actually they were going to build more houses, which is still underway. There isn't some sort of a cash injection or a complete transformation to the housing market just yet. And of course, that's been worsened by the pandemic. So a lot of unanswered questions there, but there was a lot of positivity and a lot of futuristic talk. But unfortunately, Charles, we still didn't have that clear-cut policy. In fact, Britain is looking towards a more greener future, and which the Prime Minister actually slammed those protesting at the moment against our current climate culture. So there wasn't enough talk about what people are desperately wanting to hear, but no doubt there were some positive elements there.
And also the immediate challenges of fuel and labour shortages, as you mentioned, dealt with rather peripherally, the supply chain disruptions and all the rest of it. But he talked about the bigger picture, sort of implementing a post-Brexit global Britain. But that's easier said than done, isn't it?
Indeed, it is easier said than done. And a lot of the trade deals that have been currently negotiated are actually trade deals that we had already when we were in the EU, and they've been somewhat rolled over. New, fresh trade deals with more benefits are very minimal. There have only been about 3 or 4 so far. And so a vast number of trade deals still need to be negotiated for Britain to get to this future that the Conservative Party, predominantly Prime Minister, make mention of. But the issues like the fuel shortages and the shortage of workers are typical examples of byproducts of Brexit and the trade negotiations, and those are issues that are still being faced by many people in this country. Yes, the queues may have gone down, and yes, they may be a quicker distribution of fuel, but there is still a huge disruption being made, and there is still a lot of uncertainty ahead of Christmas, which the British people take quite seriously. So a lot of that still hasn't been answered, and there, like I said, there wasn't a clear sort of policy discussion made mention today at that conference, but it is no doubt that the Conservative Party are trying to take the country and the economy to the next level.
Lape, thanks very much indeed. Lape Olarinoye, Arise correspondent, talking to me there from London.